No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus of Ephesus once said, "Each of us, from time to time, mentally returns to the past. Sometimes these are pleasant memories that warm the soul, and sometimes they are painful moments that are hard to shake off." I've noticed that after a certain age, this urge to look back, to glance behind, becomes a habit for many. The past becomes like the lenses in a pair of glasses through which the world is perceived. A person starts comparing everything with the experiences of their childhood, youth, and young adulthood. It's clear why. At the same time, another perspective is not so obvious, though quite logical for that same person. The past is just a memory of something that no longer exists, but the memory of how it was is very much alive. That's why certain images constantly pop up from memory, sometimes faded, sometimes nostalgically embellished, which creates a stronger desire to replay them in the mind more often, quietly touching them up, adding emotional colors, and feeling a burning desire, well, for some, to share them with someone. This whole "remember how it was" situation often shows up at parties with friends, class reunions, meetings with old colleagues, festive gatherings with old buddies, and quite often in family life too. What is all the talk about? About how bright, easy, fun, interesting, sad, scary, or difficult it was. In short, about everything that was somehow connected to emotions and powerful experiences. Even though our brain remembers everything it encounters throughout life, it keeps only a tiny fraction of memories, at arm's length so to speak, while submerging everything else into the depths of the subconscious. Our perception of time isn't just a flow of events, it's a complex process involving different parts of the brain. The hippocampus is responsible for forming long-term memory, while the amygdala strengthens emotionally charged memories, making them more stable. This explains why moments filled with strong emotions, whether joy or stress, stay in our memory for a long time. Professor Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel laureate, wrote, "We don't remember our whole lives, but only specific moments, and even those in a distorted way. Our brain reconstructs the past rather than reproducing it accurately. Therefore, it can seem better or worse to us than it actually was. Sometimes this leads to getting stuck on certain episodes. Why do we mentally return to the past? From a psychological standpoint, there are several reasons why we might get stuck in memories. Unfinished business, according to Gestalt psychology, our brain seeks to complete initiated processes. If a relationship or an important event ended abruptly, the mind will replay it over and over, trying to find a logical conclusion. Then there are traumatic events. Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, causes memories of severe stress, such as accidents or losses, to literally get stuck in the memory. They can surface unexpectedly, triggering an emotional response as if it's happening right now. Another reason is identity formation. Our perception of ourselves relies heavily on past experience. For example, a person who was successful in their youth but is going through a crisis now might mentally return to their victories just to avoid feeling lost. Then there's the vividness of childhood and teenage memories. I'm sure you've noticed that events from childhood and youth seem much more intense than adult life. This is because during this period, the brain is actively forming new neural connections and we experience many first times. This is exactly why people often idealize their past, perceiving it as a golden age. And it's all because the present moment lacks fresh colors. Fear of the future. The future is uncertain and unknown, while the past is clear and so familiar. The existential psychologist Irvin Yalom wrote that the fear of death and change makes the past more attractive. It seems like a stable island in an ocean of uncertainty. Idealization of the past. Our brain tends to remember the good and forget the bad. This cognitive bias is called the Rosy Retrospection, or the Golden Age effect, when it feels like everything used to be better than it is now. Back in my day, things were different, we sometimes hear. Social influence, historical memory, family traditions, and cultural myths create anchor points through which we perceive the world. The French historian Pierre Nora called these places of memory, collective symbols that shape our identity, and of course, nostalgia as a way to cope with stress. It's an emotional state associated with warm but often idealized memories of the past. It can be a feeling of joy, sadness, or mixed emotions when a person recalls moments of childhood, youth, old friendships, or family ties, music, places, and events. From a scientific point of view, nostalgia is a complex psychological and neurophysiological process. Research shows that nostalgia activates brain regions associated with memory and reward, and can also trigger the release of dopamine and oxytocin hormones linked to pleasure and bonding. Psychologists believe nostalgia can serve two main functions: emotional regulation, helping to cope with anxiety, stress, and loneliness by improving mood and maintaining identity, strengthening a person's connection to their past, helping them make sense of their personal journey and maintain a sense of integrity. However, if a person becomes obsessed with the past, nostalgia can become an obstacle to living a full life in the present. And there are many such people. When times are tough, we remember the past, especially childhood and youth, as something brighter. This brings temporary relief. Oscar Wilde said, "Memory is the diary we all carry about with us." Studies show that nostalgia can improve mood and even boost self-confidence. But if the past becomes a refuge from reality, it can lead to a loss of interest in the present. Notice that children and teenagers are almost always focused on the future. They dream about who they will become, they make plans, they eagerly look forward to new experiences. This is linked to neurophysiology. In youth, the frontal cortex, responsible for forecasting and planning, is actively developing. Moreover, the world for a child is a series of things happening for the very first time, and every new experience feels important and significant. True, later on, the perception of time changes. Adults face a repetitive rhythm of life where the eventfulness drops and new impressions occur less and less frequently. According to research by psychologist David Eagleman, the subjective perception of time speeds up with age because the brain records fewer routine moments. This makes people look back, as the past seems more saturated and meaningful, as we've already discussed. A turning point often occurs in middle age, when a person realizes that many dreams will no longer come true and that time is irreversible. This can trigger a midlife crisis, where memories of the past begin to play a dominant role, weighing on them, while the future is perceived with anxiety. What problems can getting stuck in the past lead to? Constantly returning to the past can have serious psychological and social consequences: depression and anxiety. Obsessing over negative memories can lead to chronic stress and depressive states. Difficulty in making decisions. A person living in the past may fear change and miss opportunities that the present offers. Relationship problems. If a person constantly compares current relationships with past ones or can't let go of old grudges, it prevents them from building healthy connections. Decreased motivation. By living in memories, a person can lose interest in the future and stop setting goals. Physical health. Chronic stress and anxiety over the past can negatively affect the cardiovascular system and immunity. Many religions and philosophies emphasize the importance of living in the present. In Buddhism, the concept of anicca, impermanence, teaches that clinging to the past leads to suffering. The 14th Dalai Lama said, "If you live in the past, you miss the present." Christianity places great emphasis on forgiveness, both for oneself and others. Jesus taught, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." This can be interpreted as a call to free oneself from grudges and old memories, to live here and now. The theme of the past interests not only scientists, but also writers, directors, and artists. For example, F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel, The Great Gatsby, is the story of a man trying to reclaim a lost past, but who ultimately becomes its victim. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind explores the idea, can we forget the past without losing a part of ourselves? Movies like Christopher Nolan's Memento show how memory shapes our reality, and Woody Allen's Midnight in Paris demonstrates the idealization of the past. The main character believes the world was better before, until he realizes that people in the past thought exactly the same thing. What to do when the past interferes with living? If you feel that memories are holding you back, try the following. Physical activity is the simplest thing. Sports, exercise, and yoga reduce stress levels and improve emotional state. Psychotherapy, for instance, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, helps weaken the dependence on the past and the excessive influence of painful memories. Gestalt psychology helps close unfinished situations and free up attention for new experiences. It's important not to erase the past, but to see it as lessons that help us grow. This is where the cognitive direction in psychology and many other methods and schools of thought come in. Hello everyone, this is Oleg Sukharev, a clinical psychologist working in the cognitive behavioral tradition. Today, I was asked to answer the question of how to get rid of painful memories and experiences of the past. Working in CBT, I can say that cognitive behavioral therapy deals very well with the consequences of painful memories and past experiences. Why do painful memories have any influence on our present at all? Because, as you all remember, there is a saying, we all come from childhood. This expression means that our basic behavioral patterns, our main life rules, and our beliefs are formed in childhood. Childhood is a period when we soak up information like a sponge, and children soak it up without evaluation. A child accepts the evaluation of information from its source, and the sources are our close ones, parents, grandparents, friends we trust. When a child absorbs information about what is happening in the world, they also absorb the evaluation of that information. That's how an attitude towards certain events is formed. And this attitude, essentially, is not the child's. It's the attitude of the people from whom they received the information. If a child is told, for example, that they are somehow wrong or that something is wrong with them, they take it at face value and then start looking for proof. Well, this happened here. I must be wrong. And this happened there. I really am wrong. Gradually, this opinion of oneself, received from the outside from adults, becomes their own opinion, the child's opinion, and then it moves to the level of the subconscious. The brain basically says, why think about this? Why check it? That's just the way it is. And then a belief is formed. For example, I am somehow wrong, the child tells themselves. But this belief isn't at the level of words. The child doesn't literally say it in words. It's a belief at the level of experience, an experience of oneself as being wrong. When this child grows up, this experience starts to manifest in various situations. And since being wrong, being an outcast, being unloved, or being helpless is uncomfortable, the psyche starts to protect itself. It forms compensatory internal rules. I must be like this so I won't be helpless or wrong, so I won't be an outcast. And these rules, meant to help the core belief, can be very rigid and impossible to fulfill. They become irrational. They are very critical. It must be exactly this way and no other. This criticality leads to the fact that, in different situations, the person cannot fulfill these internal rules. Expecting the situation to meet these rules and failing, the expectation is not met. And then the person experiences a negative reaction in that situation. Negative thoughts about themselves, well, I knew I was like this, and here I am, I have no future, and so on. This is just an example. Consequently, negative emotions arise. This is how painful experiences from the past, painful events, and the painful memory of the past affect our present. But there is a way to work with this, a way to get rid of it and reach a completely different state. Cognitive behavioral therapy suggests looking at this situation through the lens of the connection between cognitive, emotional, and behavioral processes to see how this negative reaction happens inside you, how it's linked to the past, what belief was formed based on the past, and how that belief shows up in your life now, whether it helps or hinders. If it doesn't help, if it's irrational and leads to dysfunctional, destructive consequences, CBT offers tools to change this cognitive, emotional, and behavioral pattern. And then you find yourself not in the past, but in the present, forming a new attitude toward today's reality, toward yourself, today, toward other people, and you gain new adaptive possibilities based on this new framework. It's a therapeutic process. To start it, if you want to, reach out to a psychologist who works in the cognitive behavioral field who can provide you with this opportunity, and you will learn these tools. They are very practical. They allow you to solve any negative problem that causes negative reactions and learn to live happily, to live in the present. Practice mindfulness. Meditation helps you concentrate on the present, feel the moment itself, and learn not just to live, but to be. Reflection helps develop mindfulness, being aware of the here and now and seeing everything that distracts from the current moment. To sum up, we certainly cannot change the past, but at the same time, we certainly can change our attitude toward it. Understanding why we get stuck in memories gives us a chance to live more consciously, freely, and just as brightly and interestingly as in childhood. After all, the most precious thing is what is happening here and now. Life itself. And here and now is the place and time where only the subject can exist. The subject has no past and no future, only the present. The past and the future belong to the personality. But here's the catch. For that very reason, the personality is incapable of living in the present. Children are so happy because they live in the present moment, albeit unconsciously. Most so-called adults, like children, live just as unconsciously, but unlike children, they have lost the connection to the present, having moved into their thoughts, the nature of which is to jump between yesterday and tomorrow, between a minute ago and a minute from now.